Welcome back to the Dopesick Show you won't get sick of. I'm Spencer and this is Sasha. I spent most of my 20s in federal prison, but I've been off heroin since April 9, 2010. Got a lot of stories about the dumb stuff I did to get put in prison. I also got quite a few stories about the crazy stuff that happened when I was actually in prison. And God forbid you end up in prison, you want to make some of the same mistakes I made. So little people in prison, LPs or whatever, I guess that's an appropriate term. He's a little guy. So there's multiple stories that I have. Sasha, here you go. Put your chin right there. About these little fellas. There's a few of them. Because just like anybody else, not everybody that ends up in prison looks like somebody you see off the movies. Okay, if you go out, just anybody goes out. Your mom, dad, the dorkiest person goes out and commits a crime, they end up in prison. So there were a handful of little people. Now this guy in particular was probably about 4'9". I would say he's about 4'9". And the first dealings I had with him was actually in my first couple days in prison. My first couple days in prison alone could have been a movie in itself. Okay, the first morning I wake up and I go sit down at a table. At the next table beside me, Flamin' Raymond said something crazy and spit my milk back in the thing. And I'm like, what did he just say? I says, oh, that's Flamin' Raymond. Yeah, that was my first day. So pill line, if you get medications, you have to stand in line. It can be anywhere from 10 minutes to 30 minutes at the low security. It's anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour and a half at the medium because there's quadruple the people. So I'm standing in this line, and ahead of me, I was standing further back in the line. He was up towards the front. There is a black man who's about 4'9". He's doesn't have much fat on him. He's small, all the way around, boned and everything. And probably looks like he's got to be 50 or 60 years old at least. And he is just talking crap to people. Like, he's talking to certain people, just random people he picks out of line, he knows to them and saying, man, don't you know, boy, and he'd do stuff like that. I'm like, what is going on here? What is actually happening? And, every morning I'd be in this line and I'd hear this little guy talking trash to people. Then you go to eat in the kitchen, in the cafeteria, depending on which order your building gets called in cleanliness. You do a 2-week inspection. The cleanest building eats first, the dirtiest building eats last. Well, one of these times, my building ends up being close to his building in the line of eating. So he's not too far ahead of me in line. And he's talking to the people that are serving the food behind the counter. And I mean, he's cussing them and everything, saying, don't you know I'll whoop your mother and everything else. And he's just talking crazy cash stuff just right to their face. And I'm looking at the CO because, like, if I were to do this, I imagine I'd be sent to the lieutenant's office. I imagine I'd do something else. It sounds like, I think this guy's one of those people that just, like, maybe it was because he was a smaller person, it was overlooked. Maybe because he's just one of those people that does it so much, they know he's a little bit crazy, that they just let him do it. But the CO just standing there, and this is not a pleasant CO. This is not a nice guy, but he's a kitchen CO. He just standing there like this. So, yeah, every day you'd hear this trash talk from him. There were some people that would talk back a little bit, and there were some people he was friends with, and with them it'd be a little bit more. He'd have a smile and everything else, but with other people he was just talking crazy as could be. And I'm thinking, this guy has to be out of his mind. I mean, you hear about, small man syndrome and stuff like that, but this was on a completely different level. Like, I cannot believe the stuff that's coming out of his mouth. Do you know where you're at? You are in a federal prison. You're over the hill. You're probably 60 years old, and you're talking crap to 20-year-old everything else. And, like, literally, I could put this guy, I could carry him across my shoulders, a football field and back in a relatively quick time. Like, I could fold him and put him up underneath of something. I'm thinking, what in the world has got him the courage to be talking like he does? Just old, set in his ways, certain people. A lot of old people who are set in their ways are quiet. And when you cross them, they do something. But this guy was just in your face. He had to be seen. He had to be known. And it was something else. Now, the whole time I'm thinking, watching this, I'm thinking, what if somebody ends up doing something to him? What's going to happen? You know, like, you can't talk all that stuff, then something end up happening one day. Now, sometimes, you know, people like friends of mine, like, you know, me, I see Pinto or I see somebody like that, we're going to, you know, like Rick James said, you know, Rick James in his interview said, you know, you see a brother, you throw him up, you throw him up, you see who's quicker, you know, and you throw him back and forth, you know, kind of like slap boxing. Well, there's a day in Pill Line, you know, and the whole system of Pill Line is screwed up, okay? They let people have to eat at 7 o'clock. The compound usually closes down by 7:30. They don't let you get your medication until 8 o'clock. So you have to stand out there for 20 to 30 minutes in a line at Pill Line while the window's closed. It makes no sense. But if you don't go out there and stand in that line before they close the compound, the door's locked. You can't go back out to get your medicine. So for 20 to 30 minutes, you're stuck out there standing. In the winter, it was terrible. I dressed like an Eskimo, okay? I'd have a t-shirt, 3 thermals, 2 sweatshirts, a jacket. I'd be walking like this. And people laugh at me, and I said, I ain't cold, though. I hated the cold. I despised the cold. And, you know, you'd have to stand out there in literally single-digit weather. It was inhumane and it's wrong, you know, if we're talking about it. You know, the Eskimo thing, that's funny, but this was inhumane and wrong, and they still do it. And you've got old people, you've got people with health problems, just standing out there in the cold, waiting to get their medications. But that's not the point. Point is, we're standing out there, and it's one of those days. And he was talking to somebody about something, and he was saying, don't you know I like it? And he said, little man, I'll bust you up. And, you know, they got talking back and forth. Now, the guy was a little older, too, he was talking to, but the guy was substantially taller than him and, you know, bigger. I mean, the guy wasn't anything huge or nothing. I mean, he had a little extra weight on him. He's probably about 200 pounds. Would have been healthy if he was about 170. But, I mean, he's literally, like, twice what this guy is dang near. So they start talking, and, you know, like you're talking about throw him up. You know, and despite being as short as he was, okay, his arms were a little bit longer. See, reach is something that isn't, you know, universal. So, for instance, usually if you are 5'9", which is 69 inches tall, your reach, fingertip to fingertip, is 69 inches. Me, I'm 5'9". I've got short little nubby legs. I got Gary Coleman's legs, okay? My legs are nubby and stubby. But I've got 73 inches fingertip to fingertip. So my reach is that of somebody who's 6'1". So I have longer arms. He had longer arms. Not incredibly longer. I would say, you know, realistically, he could have possibly had something as much as a 65-inch reach. Somebody that was 5'5", but he had a little bit longer arms. So when you look at it, him and the guy who were throwing him up, their reach was probably only about 5 inches difference. So that does come into factor. But they start, you know, slap box, and he moves, and he move quick, and he keeps throwing out his jet, and he smack guy. And then the guy, they keep going back and forth. This guy can't touch him. And he's smacking him in his face, you know, slap boxing. Now, that's a dangerous thing to do whenever you do that. A lot of time whenever I did that with people, you know, I throw it an inch away from their face. I throw it an inch away. I throw it as close as I could, not making contact. When you touch somebody's face, that does something different. I hate for my face to be touched. Casey, my fiance, she had to get over that. She thought it was something like some type of, you know, issue with her. And I'm like, no, you know, I don't like my face to be touched. You know, like people rubbing your face. And I don't do that. So especially with me, somebody touched me in my, I'm gonna get a little aggravated. Now for slap boxing, you know, it's an understood agreement. This guy gets really mad at it, and he ends up, no, we'll quit playing with that. We're gonna quit playing with that. See, I told you, sucker, and he keeps on talking trash afterward, and the guy gets mad. They didn't actually fight. They didn't actually fight this time. There are others where a couple little incidents happen. Didn't always work out for him, the little guy. But anyway, I watched him, and I was like, oh, gotta press the button. We're all good though. But I was sitting there watching it, and I'm like, the little guy actually did box. He wasn't just talking trash. I thought he was one of those people, you know, Mr. Me Too's. I call them the astronauts because that's the only thing they hadn't done is an astronaut. There was one dude I knew said on piece of horse, part of a horse in Kentucky Derby. They said all this other stuff. And no, you didn't. Lie. So that's what I thought this guy was doing. But apparently he used to box. Okay, this was not just how it was. He was not just that evasive and that quick. There are people that, you know, think they can fight, and then there are people that are trained. This guy had boxed. This guy had boxed a good bit. this guy could move. This guy could throw his hands. And it tripped me out. Because I'm like, this little tiny guy was touching him up a little bit. You know, didn't touch him once. Not once. He could move. So, but anyway, just wanted to get a short one real quick, getting this up a little bit late today. We'll have another one up tonight, but this was just a funny one. I got more stories about him. I talk, you know, I've been kind of a recluse, but I've been talking with people that I was in prison with, and we just go down the line talking about different people and funny stuff. I ask them, tell me about, you know, this, and that, blah, 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 talking about, you know, the people we remember that were funny, and I'm like, yeah, oh, shoot. It was like we was talking about somebody the other day. I talked about Shorty, who disappeared. I see him sitting there, I turn around, he disappeared. How he dug a little tunnel, dug that hole in the ground that they had. He's so small, he just looked like Mario. Boom. We were talking about stuff like that, and it came to mind. You know what I mean? There are more people, and basically, you know, whenever I do these stories, I write down every person that I know. For every person that I knew in prison, good, bad, heard stories about, saw in passing, whether it be a chomo, the people I was friends with, gang members, this, that, I write them down, and I write little one-sentence lines. And those little one-sentence lines are what reminds me of an entire story about this person. There are so many people that I knew over the years in prison, and there are at least 3 minimum stories for each person that I knew. That's a name that I could tell you about, because there's always something happening. There are more stories that people know that they don't really realize they know. There's stories you get told from other people. So this was an interesting one that got brought up to me, and I can't believe I hadn't thought about him in a minute. There's so many other things, but there are multiple ones of this little fella. So anyway, if you like the video, press the like button. If not, that's 11 minutes and 42 seconds of your life, which you'll never get back. For that, I'm truly sorry, but I do hope you liked it.